Warning, this podcast contains spoilers, folks, for She-Hulk Episode 8, so be warned. Watch that stuff before you come here. And joining us now to discuss She-Hulk Episode 8, Ribbit and Ribbit, is the writer of that very episode, the wonderful, the all-knowing Cody Ziglar. Cody, how are you, man? Great episode.
Thank you,
so
brother.
Good.
I'm good. I am, as you have both seen, I just wolfed down half of a chopped cheese because I literally walked over here to this recording from Comic-Con. So I have indeed been walking here, and I got like a nice little chopped cheese. So like, I feel like I'm really leading into my Hell's Kitchen stay. So like, I'm doing good.
I love it.
Well, lots to unpack in this episode, but first let me set the stage by reading this tweet by Televisor that was tweeted on September 29th, and that was later quote tweeted by a head writer of She-Hulk, Jessica Gao. Here is the tweet. Kevin Feige, please, I will literally suck your dick if it means Daredevil will finally show up in hashtag She-Hulk. There are only 2 episodes left, and I've seen 0 Charlie Cox. To reiterate, I will perform oral sex on you, Kevin, in order to see more Daredevil. This is not a joke. And the tweet by Jessica Gao, time to collect, hashtag Daredevil, hashtag Shield. So Matt Murdock's MCU debut as Daredevil. Talk to us about writing this episode, man.
Dude, it's. I mean, I've been saying this all day, but the word is surreal. Like, it's so crazy. 3 years ago is when like we wrote this stuff, but I'm sure Gao can attest to it. But I think the reason I was given this episode is because one day we were discussing, they're like, hey, who can we use? They're like, well, contractually we can use Daredevil because like some Netflix thing or whatever. Yeah. So like we were talking about like how does Daredevil's powers work within the confines of the MCU? You're like, the TV show is like a little bit more grounded. Like, how can we comic book it? And they were like really going back and forth. They're like, all right, so he can hear, but like how well can he hear? I just happened to have the panel in Mark Waid's or Daredevil, the trade paperback, and I pulled it out to the exact page where there's a scene where he's walking through the streets of New York with Foggy, and like he's like, you see like his powers going off and stuff, and like I yelled, "This is how his power works," and they all were like, odd hush, and they were like, "Calm down, put the comic book away," and then they're like, "All right, we think Zig has to write the Daredevil episode," so I think that's how I somehow fanboyed my way into writing for Daredevil.
That is incredible. And I am pretty sure that when we spoke to Gao, she was like, Cody would always be pulling out a comic like Cody and Zeb. So I'm pretty sure you are absolutely correct. So the best thing about this, I think, is like, one, you have Matt down on pat. Like it's so much fun. I was saying this before we started recording, but like a lot of the Netflix Daredevil is like, Matt is so hot and he's getting beaten up and he's got Catholic guilt and he's like so sexy and broken. But comic book Matt is kind of like dwarfy and like a lot of the time, right? So it was kind of fun to see that.
Much quippier than I think people realize.
Yeah, he's quippy, he's silly, he's kind of an old hat at being a superhero, and all of that really comes across here. So could you talk about kind of getting to build and introduce that rapport between him and Jen? Because that's such a big comic book thing.
Yeah, again, like I'm sure like everyone here, like we love the Netflix Daredevil series.
Yeah. Of course.
And like the way we're going into it, the way that I sort of pitched it was that the scene where they're at the bar where he's talking about both worlds, like Jen can do this and She-Hulk can do that. Like that was pretty much my pitch for the episode, was that like this is truthfully like Jennifer's, or She-Hulk, I guess, first like superhero outing. Like she's never done superhero shit. So like, classic comic, like you have a team up, and like it makes perfect sense to bring Matt, like they have a relationship in the comics, like and there are very few other lawyer superheroes within the Marvel world that like you want to play together, and also like their dynamic in the comics is super fun. Like Zeb would always reference the panel in this She-Hulk comic where they're all like on the Golden Gate Bridge and like
the Charles Soule stuff.
That's
so good.
He's just busting out like a squat in midair, and like that's the fun dynamic of the relationship. So like we really wanted to bring that into it, and Gao was very she was very kind and let me pretty much run wild with it, and like that was like our friendly, this was supposed to be like She-Hulk has transitioned into like a superhero, like obviously still learning, but like this is the proper mentor to have, and like that's definitely the energy we went into when like writing this episode. Like writing a team up has always been the dream, but let alone with like Tatiana and Charlie Cox, is like that was the fucking dream, dude.
I know. I just came away being like, "Fucking, we need much more of this. Like whether this is a series or something." I love that mentorship, and I love the way as Matt gives a dissertation on the difference between goons and henchmen. It's something he's very familiar with. Of course, he's waded through warehouses and bars, a plenty of both varieties.
Yeah.
And then, they're talking about how they're going to approach this particular problem of invading the lily pad. And Jen's like, well, just let me do my thing. And I love the way Matt's like, what thing? You've never done this. You don't do this. And then that dynamic is so perfectly distilled from the comics. How much of that, was that a collaboration also between the actors? Like, how much of that just emerged from this kind of the process of just doing it and of seeing them do it?
I think Gal was on. I remember she was texting me when she was shooting that episode. She was like, "Fucking Tat and Charlie have she was just spark emojis. Like they have such good chemistry." So a lot of that I think was also rewritten on the day by Gal because you see them working together, and she was like, "Yeah, I can't remember the first scene they shot, but she was texting me about the bar scene, which is the first flirty scene in the episode, and she was like, "Yeah, they have such good chemistry. I think people are really going to dig it." So I think she really leaned into it, and the fact that we got the first walk of shame in the MCU was really that was really
so funny.
In the costume.
So funny. The other thing that's funny is anytime someone gets smacked in the head with a titanium stick, there's nothing funnier in Marvel Comics than getting knocked out by a stick.
Yeah.
Truly. It's here's a little CTE for you. Bap.
Pop. So and the funnest thing about this episode is especially in the lead up, you guys really got to play with the fact that it's not just Matt, in his first long form return after that very funny, cameo in Spider-Man, but you also got to play with this idea that there's this other character everyone wants to see, and it's Leapfrog. So could you talk a little bit about bringing in Leapfrog and having Eugene be Leapfrog instead of his dad, or at least it be more of a legacy thing, and just kind of generally the fun that you had bringing in this trashy rich kid supervillain?
I got Leapfrog was 100% the pitch from Zeb Wells. For some reason, he was a huge Leapfrog. So he was a huge Frogman stand, and he would not shut up about you saw his episode before. He loves those F-list characters. So he was really, really gunning for Leapfrog. And you're yeah, this is a cool key character we could put in. And I think we really like the idea of it's LA based, so does it make more sense to have him be oh, he's an LA rich kid, so the idea his dad is on the level, but Eugene is just a snotty rich kid that has millions of dollars, and he likes to cosplay as Tony Stark on the weekend, only he's a dipshit. And the idea that he's surrounded himself with a bunch of goons who are just yes men who will hang out with him at his leap head, that's very much the energy that we wanted to bring for Leapfrog. That's how we thought we could bring it a nice fun update to him and make it a little bit more LA specific.
Yeah.
Something that I've really been amazed at is the way this show has predicted the conversation around the show. Whether it's
incredible,
it's incredible. Whether it's the honestly and sadly predictable reaction of the toxic fan base, or in this episode, the way it seemed to predict the Nikki is the bad guy theory that has been floating around. That is a theory that has emerged of late, that it's Nikki who is the leader of the bad guys, who is secretly that has been going around. And so there is that moment where post the hookup with Matt, Jen's breaking the fourth wall, being why is the episode still going? It's weird that it's still going. Is there some big twist that's going to happen? And then Nikki jumps out, and there's even the kind of ominous diegetic music that is making you think oh, here it is. But then she has, her makeup gear, and she's getting Jen ready for the gala. Are you surprised at how well, you're just finding out about the Nikki is the bad guy theory, but I was holy shit, they even predicted that people would be that Nikki is the bad guy. How much of that has surprised you?
I didn't even know that, because I didn't know that Nikki was a bad guy was a thing that was around. But, I think that scene was added by Gal. I think it's really a testament to how fucking on the pulse Jessica is, and also like she's been writing forever. Like you guys interviewed, like she's been writing forever. Like truly, like I can think her first 2 years writing, she wrote like 30 scripts, which is just unheard of for a writer. So like she just knows that shit like the back of her hand, like in and out. And like I think she also like she's a huge MCU fan, so I think she also knows how the fans would react to things, particularly when you have me and Zeb and Jackie Gale in the room yelling about MCU theories. So like, I think the call was definitely coming inside the house for some of that. But like, I think you guys already touched on it, but like the intelligentsia side of it, like all those dudes are just so easy to predict because they really have they have one song that they've been singing for like 15, 20 years, whether it's like, they made 6 of 9 as a lady, gross, or whether it's it's like, oh, what? Captain Marvel's a woman now? Get out of here. So like they're like God. So easy. They're so easy to predict, and like to the point where like their insults mean nothing because it's just like it's just like chatter in the background. But like all that stuff is so easy, and also like it was really funny that they would just literally take some of the tweets that they said when the She-Hulk was first announced and put them into the show. Like I personally love that touch a lot.
So good. Yeah, Jessica was saying like for sure that one of the funniest things was it just shows how like absolutely irrelevant it is because you could guess it 3 years before and it just never evolved. Like you're just making, and to see, so kind of I guess something I found really interesting is like when we see the intelligentsia kind of agents or whoever they are today, the guys, they had a very like misrepresentative use of the anonymous kind of the mask that became known as Anonymous that was obviously V for Vendetta. So could you talk a little bit about like introducing like members of the intelligentsia for the first time and kind of putting a face to them?
I'm trying to remember how it came up in the room. I feel like it had to be either a pitch from me, Zeb, or Jackie, but they were looking for like evil organizations that like could be a little bit more approachable. That wasn't like the Syndicate of Evil or whatever. They were like, these are just like obviously just like nerds that think they think they're really smart. Like you guys can go on any subreddit or 4chan and see how these people operate. So like we wanted to take something like that and also like make it a little bit more I guess as grounded as it can be in a world full of like gods and stuff. But like if you were to take that out of the show and put it in like fucking SVU, it would be a real thing. Like you could very easily see that 1-to-1. And also that's the scary part. Like that's the thing that Gal was really talking about in the room. Is like it's scary when like you could walk down the street and any of these dudes could be taking pictures of you and send it to like their website because that's what these dudes do. Like any like they're like even lower level paparazzi, only they're there explicitly for the idea of like revenge porn, which is very much how this episode's end. And like I was just watching a doc on what was that website? Is Anyone Up? I just watched the docs. Like for those who don't know, that was a website when like we were younger that was around, and like that was before there were revenge porn laws. So, like they would just have a site where people would just like not only like upload revenge porn, but like they would fully steal pictures from people and upload it. And like that
and
was
like
very much
put names of women that they wanted people to get revenge porn or photos of,
their where they worked, their Facebooks and stuff, and like the idea that could happen to someone who is impenetrable like that. I think that was like the emotional end. So I can make it really scary and really really approachable for like a thing that like a lot of I think women deal with when they date people. Like that's certainly I think to me like one of the more scarier things about the arc of the whole series. When
you are approaching an episode like this and there's significant action scenes in it, we get people have been complaining that there is not like a Daredevil hallway scene kind of action scene in MCU TV and the Disney Plus offerings of Marvel's fairs. How do you approach that in the script? Is it just like, and then She-Hulk and Daredevil fight, and then She-Hulk and Daredevil take out
jumps down
goons?
the side of a cool car park?
Or is it more detailed than that? Like, how does that work in the writing process?
I have to look at the script, but I think when their first fight scene, it was like Jin or She-Hulk punches at Daredevil and he like dodges aerobatically. I think that's like sort of like the loose dialogue for loose action lines I had for it. But like for the hallway scene, I think this is also like a Zeb pitch, was that like it was supposed to be a reference to like the hallway scenes and all the Netflix shows. And like I can't remember what it said exactly, but I was like, Daredevil prepares to fight down a bunch of goons at a hallway scene, a la like Netflix, and then like Jen just comes in and like takes it all out because like you don't know, how do you really top that? But like I was definitely like I remember pretty well putting in like really wanted to nail like the acrobatics of Daredevil, because like for me, like when I'm sure you guys can relate too, like whenever you'd see those panels of like Daredevil or Captain America or Spider-Man, any like acrobatic character where they would have like the ghost images of them like bounding off the wall, like flipping off a thing, like those are always my favorite moments. And like like for me personally, like seeing like Spider-Man 2 where like Peter like flies through like the little thin railing and like he's chasing Doc Ock, like that to me is the coolest shit on the planet. Like I love seeing that. Like that to me is like that's the coolest part of like superpowers, is being like that acrobatic and that limber. So like being able to see like, you know, it's crazy that you get to write something and like you see fucking Daredevil dodge a Hulk ground pound by flipping through the thing.
No, I was gonna say like you know? I'm gonna say that scene when we first see him and he's like he like jumps down the side of the like parking lot. That is exactly what I thought of, was those ghost images where you can almost still see him on each different level, you know?
Because it's like 20% more like than reality. Like, you know, like it's like 20% more than like a guy who's really good at parkour could do. Like that's what I always like about like those street level guys.
You could almost believe you could see it, but you know it's just a little bit more graceful than it would have been. Look, I'm gonna ask you a big question here, because there is a moment, and I'm sure like this definitely feels like something that you might not have just casually thrown in, but that's my favorite thing about these shows, is they throw in these moments that will just blow up my brain, like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier moment where Sam's like, none of us get paid, and it just like fucking ruined my head for like 2 weeks, and I'm like writing these insane articles about the economics. So the moment in this, which I was Matt just casually is like, oh, you know the Sokovia Accords have been repealed. Can you just talk about that, please?
Oh, yes, we must say that. That was such a small drop, and I was like, wait, what? They repealed it?
That's a Jessica ad.
Love that.
When they were shooting, because I can't remember what I originally had in there, but I think it was something like, I think it might have been like a really dense like lawyer talk, because we had like an actual lawyer in the episode, and like that's when I got out really all the lawyer talk. But like I'm assuming she had some conversation. She was like, can I just like repeal this thing, because like we haven't really talked about it in like a fucking decade, and also like it really comes up a lot of the stuff.
Love
so, like,
that.
That was a Gal ad. Also the Wolverine claws that Nikki does at the end was also a really fun Gal ad. Like I remember reading like the production script and be like, oh fuck, I wish I would have thought of that when she did it.
No, I love that, and it's kind of, it makes something that we talk about a lot, is like, how do you set up the MCU for like the X-Men and all that kind of stuff, and actually like resetting things so that like more grounded versions of things like the Mutant Registration Act and stuff are now in the past, like the Sokovia laws have been repealed. It opens up the space to do something that's a lot more textual as we move into like introducing more mutants and more characters. Something that She-Hulk has done a lot of, by the way. Introducing a lot of mutants.
Obviously, I'm biased, but like one thing that I really have enjoyed about the show, because again, I've been almost 3 years removed from it, outside of seeing like being on set a couple days or seeing like, you know, like PS2 graphics, like T-Pose, Tatiana, like I've been pretty removed from it. It's like seeing like one of the things that I really enjoyed about the show is that like it does feel like a comic book, as far as like, oh yeah, these characters are just going to show up. Like you need to hear the fucking backstory of how Porcupine got his powers, or like how like, you know, a Man-Bull was created, other than like a throwaway line that you would see and like you're writing like a comic or something like that. And like I really like that has added that sort of like, you know, not texture, but also like, oh, this is how big the universe is. Like it's big. It's big.
It feels like a comic book.
Yeah, it really does.
Where like your neighbor can have superpowers, but like he still works at like a janitor. Like he doesn't use it for crusading. He's just a dude that like, yeah, he can like shoot, he can control rats. Like that's his power. Like he doesn't use it for good or for evil. Like so, like I'm really excited for like some of the future shows and movies and stuff that like sort of explore that, where like, yeah, like you could have the guy in your building that has powers, has ice powers. And like his name's Johnny. He just like goes to work like every other show. Like I really have enjoyed that for the show. But again, I'm also very biased. So
no, it's the most, but it is the most comic booky kind of representation of the way that in those universes, those characters do just exist. And that's something that we've kind of really loved about it.
It's like the walk of shame. Like, I love that we are in the place in the MCU now where it's just like there's just a superhero walking around in the daytime and everybody's like, oh, you know, maybe they might sneak a selfie, but that's it. You know, it's really, really normal. The other thing I liked, and it was a subtle thing, Matt being kind of surprised that Jen hasn't heard of Daredevil, letting us know that he's been at this. He's been doing this. And like, sure, you know, Jen has not been the most, other than the fact that her cousin is the Hulk, has not been the most like plugged into like superhero culture. So Any idea how long Matt's been going about his Daredevil business?
We have been talking about it. We didn't land on a solid date, but it has been a while because like an early runner in the room was like, how big is Hell's Kitchen really? Like, I'm here right now. It's like 15, it's like 10, 15 blocks. It's not like a huge area that he's covering. So like, it's not like he's like anyone outside of like New York area would like really know who he was. So like, we never let him on a hard date, but like he's been doing it for like a while. Like he's a seasoned pro. Like the whole idea is that like, if there's like people that have been doing it from the jump, in my mind, like I don't know if this is true or not or how Feige sees it, Kevin Feige sees it, but like I was like, oh, he's like one of the OG guys. Like I imagine he got his powers like before, like, while Captain America was doing his thing, like before people knew superpowers, or like, I mean, I guess he got his 40s, but like before like the Avengers were like a big thing, like you would have like, oh, there's the Daredevil of Hell's Kitchen, save me from getting mugged. Like I feel like that's like, I feel like maybe he didn't have the branding just yet, but like I think he was very much like he's been doing stuff for a while.
No, I think that you actually did such a great job. We were actually talking about it before we came. That moment when Matt is giving Jen the advice in the bar, that tells you that story of what you just said. Like, that's exactly how it felt. And I was saying, like, I would love to see Matt take on that role in future shows or movies where he kind of gets to be that for everyone. He can kind of be cranky and a bit like, well, I've done this before, rolling my eyes, but he can also be giving good advice. Like, Jen should be out there being a superhero as well as a lawyer. Matt has done a very good job at that, even though he's constantly breaking the law and he's a little hypocrite. Like, still, he has made a career, and so I guess that kind of leads to another really cool thing. What was it like for you? This is the first episode where She-Hulk gets the iconic suit. So like, what was it like to you to get to write that in and then get to like finally see it in the purple and white that Luke made for her? Like, this is, like you said, her first superhero outing. So it's the first She-Hulk suit in the MCU.
I mean, look, all of it was very crazy. All of it was like the dream nerd come true. But like being like, this is like in the room, we're like, this is going to be like her like suiting up moment, because up until that point in the episode, like she's been caught between two worlds, which is like being a lawyer and being She-Hulk lawyer and like being Jen, but also the idea of like slowly been being pushed up against like the idea of the superhero shit. So like the superhero nub stuff, all. So like getting like being able to like finally see it. Like I remember Jessica like was like showing me like some of like the prelim like pre-vet stuff, and I was like, oh, it's crazy that like that's the suit. Like I remember playing Marvel vs. Capcom 3 . Like that's the suit.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Video games, baby.
Yeah, like when's the bus gonna come up and hit up Daredevil while he's doing like for level 3 or whatever? Like it was really cool, and like I cannot thank Gal enough for like letting me like giving me this opportunity. Like it was like my first episode, like actual like scripted TV, like not storyboard driven animated stuff, and like getting like for me anyway, I was like oh shit, I'm the guy that has to introduce Daredevil. Like I hope I don't fuck it up. Like I'm the guy
you did it. You smashed it. You smashed it.
Thank you. But like it was really cool and really surreal, and like I cannot thank Gal enough for like giving me the opportunity to like take my two toys and bash them in the sand. The sandbox, like I've been wanting to forever. Like for me, like the end goal was always like running to write for Marvel. Like I want to get to that point. It's like having the first job. Be like, not only do you get to write for She-Hulk, but you get to write She-Hulk and Daredevil. I was like, oh wow, well, like I guess I could just like quit now. Like I never have to write anything else.
Well, Zig, congratulations. We can't wait to watch the finale. Have a great time in New York.
Thank you.
Yeah, see you soon.